This week in Pure Reinvention.
That's who we're really targeting this at, is people who are up for anything and who are open to a new experience.
Episode 47, Jodi Schafer, owner of HRM Services.
Engage, disrupt, adapt, repeat. You're listening to Pure Reinvention, the podcast for curious people.
Welcome to this edition of the Pure Reinvention Podcast, where we create space for the unexpected by inspiring a reinvention lifestyle. We've got a really exciting podcast to talk about, don't we?
We do, because we talked to one of our co-founders, Jodi Schafer, today.
Jodi is a wonderful team member. She brings a great deal of wealth to the Pure Reinvention team. And Misty, probably most important to me, was that kind of that aggressive, competitive nature that Jodi has.
Jodi's a great role model for a lot of reasons, and I think that by listening to this interview, you'll start capturing why she's such a great person to be around and work with, because the ideas are always there. She's always kind of pushing you to explore this or explore that, or even understand yourself a little better, and she does it all so flawlessly. You're
right. I think it's very effortlessly for her, and when you start to look at the journey that Jodi has been on throughout her career and the growth that she's been able to aspire to in a very short period of time, it just is really exciting to know as a part of the Pure Reinvention team how she adds that extra dimension that we're really interested in having and really brings the group together.
Absolutely. She's one of those people that you learn a lot from because she's lived a lot of lives. She brings experience from multiple sources and is a great reservoir to tap into when you're looking how to reinvent something.
Well, I'm really excited to get started. Ready?
I'm ready.
We are really pleased today to be able to welcome Jodi Schafer, who is the owner of HRM Services. Jodi, welcome to this podcast.
Yeah, thanks. Thanks for having me back.
You know, Jodi, you and I have had a chance to have a lot of conversations in the time period that we've known each other, and we never seem to be at a loss for our thoughts. And one of the thoughts lately that you and I have talked about that I want to spend some time on this podcast with those who are listening is this concept of what really holds us back, that we all kind of fall into our own routine, yet we're all capable of much more. What are your thoughts when we kind of think about what's holding us back?
My initial thought is fear. I think fear is at the root of a lot of it. What we're afraid of might be different depending on the person and depending on how big of a leap you want to make, but I know for me personally, I didn't set out to be a business owner. I didn't, if you would have asked me, I wouldn't tell you I had an entrepreneurial spirit. But opportunities came along and I said yes, even though I was scared. I didn't know where they were going to lead. There's a part of me that likes to be in control, that likes to have a plan. That's a very big part of me, actually.
Right.
And so my own personality can get in the way sometimes. My need to predict can get in the way of something really amazing. And so I learned early on in my career just to say yes a lot for things that came along, and I wouldn't necessarily know where they were going to lead. And I was scared every time. But it was like as soon as I said yes, then I had to figure out a way to make it happen. And I think it's amazing the energy and the creative thoughts that you can put to something when all of a sudden you've committed.
One of the things, Jodi, that you said yes to was to move from the ranks of being employed by someone to being an employer.
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit about the company that you own and a little bit of the journey of transition to get to that point.
Sure. So I graduated college with a degree in education and psychology. No idea what I was going to do with that. Spent some time substitute teaching and working as an admin assistant and working in a psychiatric unit in a hospital and coaching volleyball. And I think there was one year I got 6 W-2s, and I was doing all of those part-time jobs at the same time, just trying to figure out where I fit and what I liked. I liked a lot of things, so it was hard for me to really pick a major in college. But that doesn't translate very well into the workforce. Liking a lot of things doesn't look good on a resume. So,
Right.
So,
yet 6 W-2s is kind of setting you up for being in the self-employed with
I know,
multiple sources of revenue. That was something you were getting used to.
I guess, yeah, not intentionally. I had somebody take a chance on me. I had somebody who owned a business, watch me coach and watch me interact with parents and school administrators and ninth grade girls and figure out a way to make everybody happy and excited.
That's a challenge.
And engaged. It is a challenge, and I loved it. And she saw that those skills could translate into HR. And so that was my first jump into human resources, was with her company. She was creating an HR position for the very first time. And so I got an opportunity to learn as the department was growing, and I got to do it all as a generalist, which was a great education. But I was scared. I mean, there's definitely a part of myself that is perfectionistic, and I had asked for resources, whether it was in the form of books or classes or training. And Tony Talbot was actually a human resources consultant in the Lansing area at the time. And Tony was giving a presentation to a CEO roundtable that my CFO happened to be a part of. And it coincided with when I was asking for resources. And he came back with her business card, and that's how I met Tony. And Tony really was my guide. She became a mentor. She became a friend. And she became a coworker, because when I left that position, I started working part-time for her. And then Tony had an illness, and it was preventing her from fulfilling her role 100%. So I came on full-time, and that was scary. That was when I moved really from W-2 income to 100%, as Tony would say, eat what you kill, right? At 1099 income. And I did that for about a year, and then I ended up purchasing the business from Tony when it was clear that she wasn't going to be able to continue on. So I've been a business owner for almost 3 years and self-employed for 4, and it's still scary. It's still scary, but you know what? The joy of getting to do what I love and getting to start with a blank page and take it anywhere I want outweighs the fear. But I'm not so sure I could have convinced myself of that in the beginning.
Well, and the one adjective you left out when you described yourself was a successful business owner, that you have been very successful at what you have accomplished. Of course, you have a very successful pattern. And so your pattern has continued to go forward, in that whatever you tend to do, you tend to be very successful at. But the thing that I wonder about is, so we say yes to all these opportunities, and in your case, you've been successful.
I've been lucky.
But when you get all by yourself, and there's no one to talk to, and you are now thinking, okay, now what did I get myself into now? Okay, I'm a little overwhelmed, a little over my head. How do we coach ourselves to make sure that we can handle that thing that we just said yes to?
Yeah. For me, I think for a lot of us, you have to create a support system. And when you first start out, it might be a really small network. It might be your closest friends and family. Maybe you've kept in touch with previous coworkers that you had a strong relationship with. Maybe somebody knows somebody who will be nice enough to go to lunch with you, and you can't afford to pay them in the beginning. So it's really just about starting to build out that network of people that you respect, that you admire, that you trust. And trust takes time to build. And you have to sometimes pick folks and then decide maybe it wasn't the right choice either. So you can't be afraid to make different choices along the way. But nobody truly does it on their own. So
what your advice is you don't do it alone.
You don't. I can't. I mean, maybe somebody is out there who can, but I certainly can't.
Now, Will Carlson, who's the genius behind these podcasts that we work with, I think can also speak to the importance of building a network of support to help on your journey of success. And let's get Will's input here.
Yeah, thanks for including me in this. And I tell you, a vital part about the support network that we build in my personal journey, it's very similar to Jodi's, is that element of accountability and the ability of everybody to help me and to give me an outside input on my strengths, my weaknesses. And I found when I was branching out my own, I started in association work, and association work is a great opportunity to, be jack of all trades. And to, that was the exciting part for me was, okay, I could get into government affairs, I can get into this, I can get into that. And I discovered over time there were things that were really interesting to me and there were things that weren't interesting to me at all. And to branch out on my own. But I needed, and when I met with Mike and had Mike help me out and lay that path, and later the Breakfast Club, it was, okay, these are my goals, this is where I want to go, and I needed to really have somebody hold me accountable as, I was developing in my journey on that, so I could reach my goals and have a realistic assessment on that.
And it's not just the first person, right? So you reached out to Mike, but then how did you get connected to the others that are in your group now? How did that happen?
Well, we were all on that committee we talked about a couple weeks ago, and that the committee work that we were doing, and we all shared a passion, and we really discovered all of us had very different, unique sets, talent sets, but we also shared very much a passion, and I think kind of a philosophy of helping others, and that was very attractive to me and my development on this.
I think, Jodi, what Will is describing is the same thing that you were describing, is someone that we have confidence in is willing to invest some time.
Yeah.
And I think we subconsciously look for that individual that we can connect to that helps us on this journey, because I'm very interested in your thoughts on not only what holds us back and kind of this, sometimes for you it's you just have to jump.
Yeah.
But there's this unknown. I mean, how do you get over the fact that you're moving from a known understanding of something to an unknown understanding?
I was listening to another podcast late last week, and they were talking about this same concept, and it was this idea of fear, and theirs was specifically talking about the creative industry. And one of the guys that was on there made a comment that I thought was really insightful. He said, there's a reason you're searching right now. So just because it's known and just because it's comfortable doesn't necessarily mean it's right, and it certainly doesn't mean that you're satisfied. Because if you were satisfied, you wouldn't have these inklings, these what ifs, and you need to pay attention to that. Because the goal isn't to get everybody to jump and be their own boss. Right. The goal is to get you to feel fulfilled in whatever it is that you're doing. And for some people, they feel fulfilled in their work for years and years and years and years. And I'm jealous of those people. And I'm jealous of the people that at 9 years old knew what they wanted to be when they grew up and just did it, just a linear path. But they knew it and they're fulfilled by that. For some of us, it's not that way. And we might be fulfilled for something for a short time, as I was. I loved being in-house HR and learning and growing. But there did come a point where I started to think there's got to be more. Like I was bored. And that is something that we need to pay attention to, because that to me is frightening too. The idea that I would be in a position doing something, spending my time and my effort and my energy on something that didn't fulfill me. I might compromise and do that for a while because the end justifies the means, but at what cost? There is a cost to that, and that's scary too. So it was this realization that you're not comparing scary to not scary, because both situations have a fear element. It's just recognizing what's fearful right now in what you think of as a safe situation.
So what I think I heard you say was that for those that are getting ready to go on a journey, it sometimes starts with being unsettled. You're not quite sure what it is.
I think that's exactly where it starts.
You don't know exactly why you're not fulfilled, but there's some sort of an unsettledness to you, if that's a word, unsettledness, and you begin to start looking around for something.
You don't know what. You don't, and sometimes you don't realize that you really were unsettled until you find yourself jumping towards something else, and you're thinking, well, if what I have is so great, why would I be stretching for this? Why can't I get this thought out of my mind? Why can't I, in my free moments, when I'm driving in the car, when I'm in the shower, when I'm laying down at night trying to fall asleep, that I can't get out of my mind? And that's worth thinking about.
So this unsettledness we should learn to embrace rather than fear, because it is the messaging that's coming to us saying we're ready for something new. We're ready for the next thing. We're ready for our next growth spurt.
I think the first step is awareness that you're even feeling unsettled, because it's not as though it comes with a big sign,
Yes.
You're not happy, you
Right.
know. I guess sometimes it does, but that's when it's been allowed to go on for a long
That's when
period
it's
of time.
painfully obvious.
Yeah, I think, the goal would be to have greater self-awareness in the beginning so that you recognize these little pricks, these questions, these thoughts that are dancing through your mind that might not even be conscious. And then once the awareness is there, then the embracing.
Is a part of why you and I spent some time and wanted to create an experience called We Invent. Tell us about that.
Yeah, so I'm so excited about this because it was this very gray, sort of nebulous idea. So Mike and I started talking about some of the women that we've had the opportunity to come in contact with, successful women that have a lot of responsibility within their organizations, but seeing in them also this feeling of unsettledness or this quest for more, in a conversation about how can we pull these women together? How can we create an experience that would help them feel as though they are growing and learning and sort of reignite that passion that maybe they used to have, but they don't have anymore. And at first we thought, because Mike and I are both linear thinkers, and this is part of the problem with us, is we thought, well, we're going to put together a course.
We're going to teach them how to do this.
Teach them how to do this. And it wasn't until we had a lot of conversation and a lot of discovering, we were open to this brainstorming with other people who don't think like us, who don't look like us, who don't have the same experiences we do, that we really were able to put together an event. And we call it an experience because there really is going to be this this depth of feeling associated with this passion. We called it We Invent. And the idea is that we are putting together a series of events that women can participate in. And it does a couple things. One, we're hoping to show them and put them in contact with other inspirational women. And two, we're hoping that by being in this group and experiencing something together, that you naturally find one or two or three people in that group that you gravitate towards for whatever reason. And you start to build those support networks outside of friends and family that might exist today. People that will challenge you to think deeper or question some of these self-imposed limits you might have put out there and say, well, why couldn't you do that? Well, I could see that you could be successful at that, or I would love to see you do something like that. Sometimes we need that, and we need it from somebody other than our friends and family.
That is so very true. And I want to go back to this point that while you and I had all the answers, or so we thought, when we sat down and explained it to another one of our team members, Sonia Robinson, she wasn't buying it.
No.
And she had a much different idea of what the appropriate experience could be or should be. And interestingly enough, as I was listening to your earlier comments, Sonia was basing her philosophy on this self-awareness, that instead of being told what you should be doing, you have to discover what you should be doing.
Yeah.
How important is that in this event?
Well, that's really what the premise is. So our first event is kicking off on October 23rd, and we've intentionally limited the number of spaces we have available because we want these experiences to be with tight groups, or tight numbers, so that we can have a cohort. So there's a feeling of intimacy and trust just in the reduced numbers alone. And we're going to take this group on a journey, on a physical journey to see and be exposed to other women doing interesting things that they might have never had any knowledge of, if for no other reason than to just reignite those questions or those prickling, parts of yourself that make you question your own satisfaction. And it's got to be self-propelled. It has to be you, the one who's saying, I I really connected to this why, or I love this. I want to see more of this. I wonder why that is. What's missing right now? And for some, maybe they're very, very happy in their professional lives, and what they're missing is the camaraderie with other women, and they just don't know how to get started in that. So for some, that may be the main takeaway. For others, it might be this questioning of where they're at professionally, maybe even personally, and this idea that there is more out there, and that maybe they're ready to search for it.
To go from the known
Yeah.
to the unknown, to create a self-awareness of who you are and what your journey is.
For now, too. I mean, that's the other thing is I get caught in this a lot. I am very goal-oriented. And I think journey, I'm thinking end game. I'm thinking 10 years, 20 years down the road. And that's scary as hell. I mean, you can't plan 20, right? I mean, we have retirement plans and people that try to help us, but the truth is that's extremely overwhelming. So this idea that your journey can change and what you want can change, and you might make several journeys over your professional career, right? Or throughout your personal life. And within each of those journeys, find fulfillment until it's not fulfilling anymore, and then you jump again. So it's not one long jump. It might be 3, 4, 5 stops along the way. And as long as you're living in the moment and you're feeling good about where you're at that point, that's successful.
So the journey becomes the destination.
Yeah, and when you break it down like that, maybe it isn't quite so scary.
So then it isn't really always about, are we getting to the end game, which may change, but if
Yeah.
we are really investing in the journey.
It's what this event is intended to do. It's what all of the Pure Reinvention events are intended to do, is question where you're at and question where it is you think you want to go, and then help guide you and give you support along the journey. That's the whole point. And that's why this whole We Invent piece fits so nicely under the Pure Reinvention umbrella, because the tenets are the same. It's just the group we're focusing these on is not everybody and their brother. It's awesome women. Awesomeness is a prereq for this event on the 23rd, but I want to define that a little bit here, because awesomeness really for me means that you embrace who you are and where you're at. It's not tied to a specific title in which you hold, and it's not a front that you put out there that you think people are buying, but it's a genuineness. It's this excitement to learn more. It's an openness and an eagerness to be a part of something exciting, and that you're just up for anything. And that's who we're really targeting this at, is people who are up for anything, and who are open to a new experience. And it's the 23rd, so it's right around the corner. I cannot wait. It's going to be awesome.
We're here with Jodi Schafer, an awesome individual with an awesome outlook.
Yeah.
Thank you, Jodi.
Thanks.
For our podcast listeners, you should know that Misty Miller is the head of our Sparkle department. And Misty, there is a lot of awesome sparkleness in this interview.
It was a very sparkly interview. Yes, it was.
So what really was, I mean, we really talked about this awesome event coming up, and Jodi talked about a lot of important and very cool things. But what really struck you in this interview?
Oh, the first one, and it's odd because, or not odd, it's a serendipitous thing, because it's our first tenet of Pure Reinvention, is she talked a lot about disruption without ever really saying it was disruption. About halfway through the interview, she talks about when you feel unsettled, right? And we all do. There's always something there, and if we aren't being fulfilled, we need some sort of disruption to move us to the next step of reinvention.
Yes, I think that's a really great point. And a lot of times we don't use the word disruption because it's kind of a negative.
Or scary, just scary.
Or scary. That's another great way to look at it. But in reality, all of the ways in which Jodi described the reality of the situation is a disruption. And it is really important to be able to recognize that whether it's something missing or a little space or a little this or a little that, it doesn't have to be major disruption. It's just some sort of a deviation from the norm, or from a pattern that used to be successful that all of a sudden is not, or it's a new pattern that you want to create.
The podcast that Jodi referenced, I wanted to give a little more credit to. It's called Magic Lessons with Elizabeth Gilbert, who wrote Eat, Pray, Love, and now she wrote another book and I can't remember the title of it right now. It's something about magic, but the podcast is a spinoff of that is Magic Lessons. And it was this one podcast that hit Jodi and I right square between the eyes because of all of that. You know what? It's okay to not be fulfilled forever. And if you think, I think the advice was about a photographer. So if you think I'm a photographer, then all of a sudden you think I'm not being fulfilled by being a photographer, but I've said for so long that this is what I do, I feel trapped. Mm-hmm. Well, it's okay if you're not being fulfilled anymore. That's great, in fact. That means it's time to go on to the next thing.
I think that's an excellent point in that, we're all on this journey. And the fact that you're not fulfilled now means it's time for the next step in your journey. And if you add to, right, rather mm-hmm. than take away or even replace, but you add to the experiences that you have, that disruption is exactly what Jodi was referring to. And then once you stack those very positive experiences one on top of each other, probably always prefaced with some sort of a disruption which causes you to go up the step to the next level, think about the journey and think about the accomplishment that you make. And that's what Jodi was referencing.
Yes, and I forget sometimes because I'm so quick to shed my skin. That's kind of my nature, which is a blessing and a curse because I'm on to the next thing while people's heads are still spinning from the first thing. But what's good about that is it encourages me to be constantly reinventing. And yes. What I learned from my own experiences, people need to be encouraged that it's okay to say, I'm done with this and I'm ready for new. And it could be a 180 and it could just be a little gradual step either way.
Misty, one of the lessons that I've learned from you is that sometimes we would do better to shed our skin a little sooner than what we normally do. We tend to hold back. We tend to refrain from making the changes that are necessary. That we kind of ignore the disruption that's around us, thinking that we're more satisfied in the status quo. And a lot of what you've taught me is that by being okay shedding your skin and going to the next level, honestly, you have no idea what awaits you. Mm-hmm. And for the most part, it's a very positive and exciting thing. It isn't perfect, but it is very exciting. And I think that's what Jodi was referring to when she was talking about all this kind of this awesome journey that the We Invent experience is going to be. And just when you get on that journey, how awesome it is to continue to move up through the new experiences, which are all about making you a better you.
I think, and I want to talk about We Invent in just a second, but real fast, I want to highlight that the whole overall theme of this interview, as I was listening to you guys talk, was the being okay with moving into the unknown, leaving the known. And Jodi did a great job of explaining why that's not only healthy, but encouraged and a really great way to keep bettering yourself and seeking fulfillment.
We've heard Jodi say it a number of times, and so she's not necessarily saying that she's always that comfortable shedding her skin. In fact, I think we've heard her say many times, I have to be pushed.
Mm-hmm. That honesty was great.
Off the ledge in order to really jump. So we all have these different ways in which we have to kind of understand that we work through these different phases of growth. But generally awesome is at the other end, and I know you want to talk about that.
So speaking of awesome and jumping off a ledge, that's great. Thanks for the setup there. Let's talk about We Invent. So Jodi's been, one of the masterminds behind this women, all girls side of Pure Reinvention, and she's right. Seeing it take form and being just a couple weeks away from our inaugural event is so exciting and awesome.
It's a great opportunity for a group of individuals to spend time together, learn from each other, collaborate, have a great and awesome day, and hopefully at the end of the day be inspired to be on that journey where step by step they've got a group of individuals who cares about them, who can nurture them, and they all can support each other through their continuous journey of awesomeness.
Yeah, it's a way to not only discover through yourself and through your own personal experiences, have a network of women that you trust and that you start learning from that can push you into these things that you've talked yourself out of. And women are so good at doing that. Oh, it's not the right time, or I need to focus on this or whatever. No, get into a group of people that can push you to be better, to be more fulfilled, and to find something new and exciting, which we call finding new reasons why with Reinvent.
We Invent. What a great opportunity. We're looking forward to it. The first inaugural event will be October 23rd.
That's right, 23rd. And you can register at weinvent2015.eventbrite.com.
I believe there's a few spots left, but it is limited, so make sure you hurry.
And remember, if you're ready to make a change, make it a change that lasts. Make it Pure Reinvention.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Pure Reinvention. Keep the conversation going and get alerts when new podcasts are up by following us on Twitter at Pure Reinvention or sign up for our mailing list at purereinvention.com.